What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got some football focus. I wanted to do something I've been doing for the last couple of years. You guys have been requesting a lot of this, so I wanted to do a Pittsburgh Steelers 2022/23 year in review wrap-up. So I wanted to look at both sides of the ball individually and talk about positional breakdowns as far as who kind of started where and finished where, and kind of where I see things going as far as next year goes. Now, I'm not going to do any free agency or draft coverage yet because those are separate videos. I'll bring you guys draft predictions, needs for free agency, who we should re-sign, who we should cut, who we should go after in free agency, who we should draft, who our targets should be, all those things in separate videos. But for right now, I want to break down what happened last year in review and kind of where I see positionally us coming into the next season. I'm going to start today with the offense. If you guys want to see the defense, come back in 7 to 10 days and I will give you guys the defensive review. But for today, I want to focus on the offense. Now, I think in general, for most every position, including both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively, it's going to be the tale of two seasons, right? The first half and the second half. We started our first 8 games of this season at 2-6 as one of the worst teams in the NFL, and finished the season at 7-2 in our last 9 games as one of the hottest teams in the NFL to end the season. Finishing the year once again 9-8, Mike Tomlin not getting a losing record and all that, finishing with a winning record. Kenny Pickett in his last 8 starts, 7-1. Looking really, really solid on the upswing, and everything improved as the season went along. As most young teams do, especially with rookie quarterbacks, it takes time to gel, and the units have to click and connect, and everything has to fall into place to start getting better as the season goes along. And overall, I'm pretty enthused. You look at those first 8 games and you go, oh, we're one of the worst teams in the league. How could we ever do this? This was terrible. It's going to be a long rebuilding process. And then by that 7-2 finish, one of which Kenny Pickett didn't really even play in, he got hurt in the first series. So Pickett's last 8 full starts, he was 7-1. You start seeing everything come along and you go, okay, we've got a bright future ahead of us now with this offensive nucleus in place. Bringing you guys the stats for last season, Kenny Pickett overall was 245 completions out of 389 attempts. That is a 63% completion percentage. I would say really good for a rookie, especially in that second half of the season. 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And again, most of those 9 picks came early on. He had, I want to say, 5 or 6 of those 9 picks in his first couple of starts. He started off very rocky, including 3 picks in his first game, and then I think another 1 or 2 picks in his second game. So 4 or 5 of those 9 picks happened in his first 2 games. He got much better in that second half of the season after he came back from that concussion injury. Came back really strong. Pickett, again, started off looking very, very scared. The play calling wasn't opened up for him. He was doing a lot of those jet sweep handoffs, a lot of checkdowns. He was looking to run first and pass second. He was looking at very basic screens and a lot of bubble screens and a lot of short slants. They weren't giving him much of a chance. The offensive line had not come into their stride at all with the rookie quarterback, so the cadence was off, and we started off very, very slow. Things really picked up toward the second half of the year. Pickett looked more comfortable. He was using his legs to get outside the pocket, but he was looking downfield as a passer more. He started looking pass first and run second. He started taking more chances downfield. The play calling opened up a little more, which opened up the offensive line a little more, which opened up the run game a little more, which opened up more time for the wide receivers to get downfield, and everything sort of runs on itself. When the quarterback starts getting more time from the offensive line, he starts getting more comfortable throwing different routes, which means the receivers get more of a chance to get open, which means the offensive coordinator starts calling better plays for him. So everything works in tandem, and those stats picked up big time in the second half of the season, marked by 2 important back-to-back wins where Pickett got game-winning drives on the road against Baltimore and at home against Chicago in back-to-back games where he had last-second drives for game-winning touchdowns. One, I think, was to George Pickens, and the other was to Pat Freiermuth, I believe. But very, very strong clutch performances which carried over into the final game of the season, where Pittsburgh got a nice dominant win. So really nice stride there at the end. Again, 7-1 in Pickett's last 8 full starts, not counting that Baltimore injury that Trubisky came in. Baltimore won by 2, with Trubisky throwing 3 interceptions, including 2 in the red zone, which we would have won, I think, with Pickett or anybody else back there at quarterback. So passing the ball, bringing the rookie along, I think you have to look positively at what he's done. You also want to look quickly at his rushing stats, which are very solid as well. 55 carries, 237 yards, and 3 touchdowns with his legs. So Pickett, again, starting to run at the right times, running only when he has to, looking downfield, using his legs to get out of the pocket, but using his vision to trust his throws and trust his arm going downfield. Running the ball was the same thing, started very, very slowly. We had a quarterback who really was one-dimensional in the pass game. We had an offensive coordinator who wasn't calling a lot of plays and was playing very conservatively. Teams were stacking the box. The offensive line wasn't fully gelled yet, so they were playing at their worst. So they were stacking the box on Najee, and he was getting nothing early in the season. But that second half of the year, we saw Najee getting more comfortable. We saw the line gelling more. We saw the play calling open up more. We saw Jaylen Warren being integrated more, which I was calling for all season. And now we've got this dominant 1-2 punch that I feel very comfortable with. Najee Harris, 272 carries for 1,034 yards and 7 touchdowns rushing. You feel very good about Najee Harris getting over 1,000 yards in back-to-back seasons behind a pretty weak offensive line. This line played healthy together all year. They played the full season together, essentially, with very few injuries. And Najee really picked it up in that 7-2 stretch. Only a couple 100-yard games, but had several games where he was averaging about 80 yards a game there on the ground, plus his pass-catching ability. So we saw Najee open up, and Jaylen Warren became a really big threat, a dual threat for us. 77 carries, 379 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He became the thunder and lightning combination to Najee Harris, where he can run about as hard as Najee, doesn't break quite as many tackles, but he's a strong runner and finishes runs well, but also in the open field breaks tackles. He's the better of the 2 pass-catching backs. Not saying Najee's not a good pass catcher, because he is, but Warren is a really good open field player to make guys miss, and he's quick. He adds that extra speed to Najee's power, and now all of a sudden you've got, 1,400 yards and 8 rushing touchdowns on the ground. Both guys adding a lot to the passing game in the second half of the season. Najee, 41 catches for 229 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns, and Jaylen Warren, 28 catches for 214 receiving yards. So Najee, as the stronger overall runner with the better vision, Jaylen Warren making more guys miss and being a little quicker and the more complete back in the passing game. So these 2 guys adding another 500 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, giving Najee 10 total touchdowns for the year and almost 1,300 yards total. That is a really, really solid. If you look at Najee with 1,300 yards and Jaylen Warren with well over 500 yards, adding 11 total touchdowns, that is a 1-2 punch that feels very secure in the future. I don't know what we're going to do as far as McFarland or Snell or anybody else back there, but we have our top 2 running backs now. We got Najee, who's going to be a guy we're going to re-sign and keep here for a long time if all things go our way, and Jaylen Warren is an undrafted rookie, getting underpaid, frankly, but he's on a rookie contract for the next 4 to 5 years. You got to feel really good about these 2 as your 1-2 punch in the running game now with how they finished healthy and strong at the end of this season. Something else you got to feel good about is some of the wide receivers. Now, we've got our number 1 wide receiver yardage-wise is one to look out for. Deontay Johnson, 86 catches, led the team in catches, led the team also in yards with 882 yards, but no touchdowns. Had 147 targets and no touchdowns. That's alarming. They tried to target him toward the end of the season. You saw them trying to force that touchdown the last 2 games. Didn't work out. He did get a couple 2-point conversions, but no touchdowns. The problem is 7 drops. Now, I've seen some places had him at 7, like PFF. Other sites had him at 6 drops, like CBS Sports. But either way, he's at 6 to 7 drops, which puts him in the top 10. I think he was tied for 6th or 7th with that 6 to 7 drops. So he's in the top 10 in drops, coming off of 2 consecutive years where he was in the top 10 in drops. That means, once again, 3 years running now that he's got a drop problem, and he's dropping really basic catches. Every year he starts off really strong where he's catching these dynamic deep balls and these traffic catches and he's breaking tackles. Again, Deontay's a great athlete. And when he has these contested catches and these deep balls, he's making some really good catches. He can find the sidelines. He can find the back of the end zone. He can toe tap. He's dynamic in the air. He can locate the ball. And he's incredibly fast. And he's one of the best route runners in the entire NFL. And he's the only wide receiver in Pittsburgh getting separation from his defenders to get open. The problem is, whether it's deep balls or especially those easier catches, those short slants, those bubble screens, those plays, when he's dynamic enough to break a tackle or to get into the open field for 7 to 15 yards, he's not catching those balls. He also had a fumble this year. One fumble we're not going to hold against him too much, but he's got to be better with those hands. And he's got a big contract. He just got re-signed. So what do we do with him? There's a lot of conjecture about do we trade him? Do we trade him for somebody else and pick up a Jordan Addison in the first round? I think that's a really bad move. We'll get into draft stuff later, but I think it's a bad move. Number one, you want some veteran presence at wide receiver on this team. When you look at the other receivers on this team, there's not a lot of trusted veteran presence. Not a lot of guys who know the system very well, and not a lot of guys who are beyond their first couple of years in the league besides Deontay. You really want a veteran out there that you can trust a little bit. The trust with the hands is a question, but if you trade him away, number one, are you going to draft another rookie? Now you're going to need another receiver. So are you going to draft a Jordan Addison? Yes, he knows Kenny Pickett from the Pitt days, but do you really want another wide receiver who's not NFL proven yet on this roster with a bunch of other young guys, and then somebody else has to take on the cap from Deontay Johnson, and we have to still eat a lot of money in dead cap, so it's not going to save us a lot of space. It's going to give us another need. It's going to make somebody else forced to take on his cap space, and it's going to make us still eat a bunch of dead cap. So I think that's not going to happen in a million years, and I don't think it should. I think we have enough needs in the draft as it is. I think we have to use our picks wisely, and I would keep Deontay on this team, but we do have to work with those hands big time in the offseason. One thing we did have here was George Pickens, clearly a wide receiver one, 52 catches, 801 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is only 81 yards behind Deontay, playing much, much less, and 52 catches. He is a big-time deep threat. With 84 targets and 52 catches, he's catching most everything in his orbit, and he got by far the harder targets than Deontay did with a lot of those downfield things. George Pickens has already shown us he's got speed, he's got strength, he's a combat catcher, he's not getting a ton of separation, and he's not running a total route tree yet, but already in his rookie season, he is one of the best one-on-one combat catchers in the league with his separation as far as using his body to box guys out, locating the ball in the air, getting his hands away from his body to catch those tough catches, getting his feet down. This guy's incredible. He's already a superstar in his rookie year, and he's only going to get better. When you start seeing more route running, more of the route tree, more of the speed, more of the opportunities downfield, get this guy the ball more. He is the number one guy on our offense that needs more targets. 84 targets, 52 catches. Everything that was catchable this season for him, he caught. And even some of those were called OPIs or sideline, didn't tap the second toe or whatever. He's got so much potential, it's crazy. Finally, Pat Freiermuth got him the ball more this year. He still needs more targets. 63 catches, 732 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he's been selected as an alternate for the Pro Bowl. This guy's been incredible. He's good in the middle of the field. He's good at getting tight end screens. He's become a better blocker downfield this season. He's just catching everything in his orbit. He's a great bailout guy for your offensive rookie to find him downfield. He made so many great middle-of-the-field catches this year, so many good athletic moves in the middle of the field, so many good third down and fourth down plays, a couple of good goal line plays. He's just a big physical target who gets better and better as time went on. He missed some time this year, or he might even have had 1,000 yards this season. Pat Freiermuth is a stud. When you look at this nucleus, again, the way Kenny Pickett won games at the end, the way he got more comfortable, the way he was playing clutch, you look at the combination of Najee and Warren when healthy, you look at what Deontay can do when he catches the ball, you look at Pickens, you look at Pat, you see a young core of drafted players in the last 2 years that are incredible. You add to that The fact that we have Connor Hayward, who played backup tight end this year. Zach Gentry's the better blocker, and he can still catch here and there. He's not terribly athletic, but he's stronger. But Connor Hayward has shown that he can block a little bit. He's shown that he can catch the ball when called upon. When Pat got hurt, he made clutch catches in the last 2 games of the season. He is a very good third tight end. Dare I say one of the best third tight ends in the NFL in his rookie season. He was a draft pick that really panned out this year. How about a draft pick that we haven't seen yet? Calvin Austin, one of the fastest receivers in last year's draft that has not played for us this season. What a player that could be a third or fourth wide receiver for us this year. He gave Sauce Gardner, the Jets corner, who was the best corner this season out of the draft, gave him fits, said he was the hardest receiver in college football to guard last season. We have not even seen what this guy can do. You plug this guy into jet sweeps and bubble screens, and you let him run routes down the field and see if he can get separation. Now you're adding another shifty target who can play in the run game and the pass game to our offensive team. Then you look at a guy like Steven Sims, who got more involved last year in the jet sweeps. He was a good running game guy. He's a guy that caught a few balls downfield. He was plugged in last year, kind of how McLeod was for us 2 years ago. He's a decent piece. You look at Miles Boykin, are we going to bring him back? He's mostly a special teams guy. He's mostly a downfield special teams guy, a gunner and stuff like that. But you look at him. Now all of a sudden you look at this team and you go, okay, we're going to integrate more of Steven Sims as a return guy and as a jet sweep guy. We're going to get Calvin Austin back. We're going to use Connor Hayward more. You start to use guys like Austin and Hayward on top of the fact that you got Najee, Warren, Deontay Pickens, and Pat. What an offensive team. And that's with adding nobody in free agency or the draft this year. If you add no splash play weapons, you've got all these guys. Connor Hayward's still untapped potential. Calvin Austin, we haven't even seen yet. What a dynamic addition he can be to this offense. So I like what we're seeing here. Ranking-wise, we finished pretty low, and again, that's because we started so badly. At 2-6, we were one of the worst offensive teams in the league, probably the worst offensive team in the league for the first half of the season. That second half went way up. Passing, we had 200.6 yards per game. That was 24th. Rushing, we got ourselves way up there. We started off as the worst rushing team in the league, and by year's end, we got to the halfway point. 121.9 yards per game. That is 16th in the league. We are now right in the middle, halfway, starting at last and getting up to the middle. We were the worst rushing team in the league last year and for the first half of this year. We are now up to 16th by year's end. That's only going to get better. Total offense, 322.6 yards per game. That is 23rd. And points per game, we finished at 26th in the league with 18.1. But again, that is way up from where it started. So everything is pointing upwards. The offensive line playing better at the end of the year. The running game better. The passing game better. The use of options like Warren and Hayward better. George Pickens getting more targets better. Everything feels better to me. Offensively, we are getting better as a passing team, as a running team, as a blocking team. And again, there's more guys we haven't seen. Anthony Miller is back on the team. Is he going to play as a slot guy for us? Are we going to use Sims more? Or are we going to use Calvin Austin? That's a spot we need to look at. What do you want to do about tight ends? Do you want to go 2 tight ends and use Pat and Hayward? Or do you want to use Gentry as your blocker and Pat as your receiver? Got to figure that out. I think offensive line-wise, that's our biggest need. I think we're set at tight end. I think we're set at running back. I think we're set at quarterback, minus getting whoever our backup is going to be because I think Mitch is gone. And I think we're set at wide receiver, depending on if Calvin Austin can be our third guy. I think Deontay Pickens and Calvin Austin, putting him in the slot, I think you got some really nice stuff there. And then you add some guys like Steven Sims and Miles Boykin as your backups. I think you got a pretty solid receiving team there. I think the 2 things that need work for us are going to be our offensive line, tackle, and guard spots. I think Chukwueze Okorafor is going to take up too much money, and I don't think he played well enough to warrant that money. I think you look at getting rid of him, and you look at moving Dan Moore over to his more natural spot at right tackle. So you're going to try to improve Moore by the move, and you're going to try to improve left tackle by cutting Chukwueze and getting somebody else at left tackle in the draft. Also guard. You want to add a second piece to guard. And James Daniels started off rough this year, played very well by the end of the year. He was our best offensive line player by the end of the season. You want to add somebody else on the other side. to compete with Dotson at the very least. Dotson did get better by the end, but he was one of the most penalized linemen in the league. So you want to look at Chooks and Dotson as being two guys you could replace or add depth for next season. I think Chooks is surely gone. I think Dotson will compete with the draft pick, but I think you add one tackle and one guard, and you move Dan Moore for his last chance next season. So those are the improvements I would make, but I think overall everything is looking up. What do you guys think? Tell me your thoughts on our offense, where it started to where it is now. Who would you replace? Where would you add depth? Would you replace those two offensive line spots like I talked about? Do you want to add another wide receiver? What do you think of the Deontay for Addison thing? What do you think overall at wide receiver? Tell me in the comments below. Tell me who you think will be our backup quarterback next season, because I don't think it's going to be Mitch. Do you think we bring him back on a more team-friendly deal and save some money and restructure? Or do you think we sign another cheap backup like a Brissett or a Josh Dobbs? What do you think there? Tell me in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like these videos. Please check back again next week for my defensive recap, where I go over all the positions on defense and talk about the depth in the future there. And join me again as I continue to do free agency, re-signings, cuts, drafts, projections. I'm doing all this all off season long. Here's your spot for the Steelers. Come back, and I'll see you soon.